You ever have that feeling in the cockpit? That mix of sheer terror and total excitement? For a lot of pilots, that's the steep turn. It's the one maneuver that can really get your heart pounding. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on it. We'll break it down piece by piece and show you exactly how to turn that anxiety into pure, rock-solid confidence. All right, let's get into it. And that quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? A steep turn isn't just, well, a turn. It's a demonstration of skill. It's you, the pilot, and the airplane all working together right at the edge of the performance envelope. It just feels so crisp, so precise. And let's be real, it's one of the absolute coolest things you get to do in a plane.
Well, because it's a high-stakes balancing act, plain and simple. You're wrestling with G-forces, you're trying to manage some pretty complex aerodynamics, all while keeping your altitude and airspeed locked in and your eyes scanning for traffic. It is a lot to juggle all at once, but I promise by the end of this, you are going to have all the tools you need to nail it, every single time.
But why do we even bother? Why put ourselves through all that stress? Well, it is so much more than just checking a box on your practical test. The steep turn is basically a masterclass in aircraft control. It teaches you some of the most fundamental, most important lessons you will ever learn as a pilot. Honestly, you can think of it as a crash course in advanced flying. First and foremost, it's your get-out-of-jail-free card for collision avoidance. It also sharpens your stick and rudder skills like nothing else. But maybe the most important thing is that it gives you a real, intuitive feel for how the airplane behaves under a heavy load. Oh, and yeah, pulling those Gs is just plain fun. All right, you ready to get a little nerdy with me for a second? Don't worry, I'm not going to bury you in a bunch of equations. But really understanding the forces at play here, that's the secret sauce. It's what separates just guessing from truly knowing what you're doing. So let's break it all down. Okay, so let's talk about this thing called load factor, or as we all know it, G-force. Just picture being on a roller coaster, right? When you hit that big curve at the bottom, that feeling of being pressed down into your seat, that's G-force. In a steep turn, you're basically creating your own little roller coaster ride, and that feeling of being heavier, that's the load factor at work. And this is where it gets really important. Take a look at this. As your bank angle increases, the forces on the aircraft don't just go up, they skyrocket. At a 60-degree bank, you're pulling 2 Gs. That effectively doubles the weight of the entire airplane. This is not a gentle curve anymore. And here's the key takeaway, that increased load factor dramatically increases your stall speed. That's why being precise here is absolutely critical for safety. So next up is something called the overbanking tendency. Imagine a racetrack. The person on the outside lane has to run faster and cover more ground, right? It's the same with your wings. Your outer wing is on the fast track, literally. It's moving through the air faster, creating more lift, and all that extra lift tries to pull you into an even steeper bank. You have to be the one in charge, using a little bit of opposite aileron to hold that bank angle steady. And then there's this little troublemaker, adverse yaw. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Well, when you roll into a turn, the aileron on the wing that goes up creates more lift, sure, but it also creates more drag. And that extra drag tries to pull your nose the wrong way, to the outside of the turn. That's why your feet have to join the party. You've got to use that rudder to keep the airplane's nose pointed perfectly through the turn. So when you put it all together, it's this three-way dance between lift, drag, and power. To stay level, you have to pull back on the yoke, which increases lift. But that extra lift creates more drag, which wants to slow you down. So you have to add power to fight the drag. If you get all those steps right, you'll waltz through the turn beautifully. If you get them wrong, you're going to be stumbling all over the sky. All right, that's enough theory. Theory time is officially over. Now for the fun part. Let's imagine we're in the cockpit and actually fly this thing. Here is your step-by-step guide to executing a perfect steep turn from start to finish. First things first, and I absolutely cannot say this enough, clear the area. Look left, look right, make sure you have the sky to yourself. Then it's a smooth, confident roll into your target bank angle. As you're rolling in, you add that little bit of power and dance on the rudder pedals to stay coordinated. Once you're established in the turn, keep your eyes moving. Outside at the horizon, inside at your instruments, and right back out again. When it's time to roll out, you have to lead the turn. Start your rollout about half your bank angle before you hit your target heading. And finally, once your wings level, ease the power back, take a breath, and trim for cruise. And these are the numbers you're shooting for. This is what the examiner wants to see.
And notice, the only real difference between the private and commercial standards is just 5 degrees of bank. Everything else, the altitude, the airspeed, the heading, the tolerances are identical. It is all about precision. But trust me, with practice, hitting these numbers will feel like second nature.
Look, everybody messes this up at first. It is just part of the learning process, so don't sweat it. But the absolute fastest way to get good at this is to know what the common mistakes are before you make them. So let's go over the biggest pitfalls so you can avoid them and fast-track your way to mastery. Seriously, don't be the pilot who forgets to clear the area. But the biggest mistake I see time and time again is chasing the altimeter. You see the altitude drop, so you yank back. Then it climbs, so you push forward. You just end up fighting yourself. Instead, find that sweet spot of back pressure and just hold it. Add your power, keep that scan going, lock in your bank angle, and nail that rollout. It's really as simple as that. So there you have it. You've conquered the steep turn. You've proven you can handle the aircraft with total precision under some pretty high G loads. But that's just one side of the performance spectrum, right? What about the other end? What happens when you're flying not fast, but slow, right on the ragged edge of a stall? Well, that's exactly where we're going next. So stick around and thanks for flying with us.